It is so convenient to go to your pantry, take a can of chicken soup off the shelf, and know that it is healthy and delicious and much cheaper than the store-bought brands. There are so many ways you can prepare this canned chicken soup. You can serve it with potatoes, pasta, noodles, rice, or beans. Thicken the broth with a little flour or cornstarch, season, and serve over biscuits or toast, or even pop it in a meat pie. So let's get started. I have some boneless cube chicken breasts, and you can use chicken thighs, celery, onions, carrots, peas, and some of my homemade chicken broth. You can can this chicken soup in pints or quarts, and today I'm using quart jars. This is a raw pack, and that means everything is cold or at room temperature. Earlier I washed all my jars, lids, and rings. I put about 2 inches of water on the bottom of my canner with a splash of white vinegar to help decrease the sediment on the jars. Everything is prepped and ready, and now it's time to fill the jars. First, I'm putting a good layer of chicken on the bottom, about 8 to 10 pieces, and giving them a little press to fill in those air gaps and make room for the rest of the ingredients. Next are the onions, and this is about 1/4 cup. These are frozen peas that I thawed. I'm putting in a nice layer of peas because we like peas. A good layer of carrots. And finally, a layer of celery. With the chicken and all the vegetables, this is going to make a hearty and yummy chicken soup. Filling each jar with chicken broth. I'm using my homemade chicken broth, but you could also use vegetable broth or water. Filling it to a 1-inch head space. At this time, you could also add any dried herbs that you like. I choose not to add any seasonings at this time, so I have the option to add what I like when I'm cooking. I have heard using sage in canning results in a bitter taste. I have not used any sage in canning, but I have used poultry seasoning with no issue. After pouring in the broth, another important step in canning is debubbling. I take a plastic knife or chopstick and poke down along the inside jar to release any air bubbles that are caught on the bottom or in between the food pieces. The whole idea in pressure canning and preserving is to remove all the air in the jar so the lid will seal. If you forget to debubble, there is more of a chance of the lid not sealing. Cleaning each jar rim with a white vinegar towel, placing on my lids and rings finger tight. For raw packing chicken or chicken soup in quart jars, the processing time is 90 minutes. At my location in altitude, I use 10 pounds of pressure. You will need to check the USDA guidelines for where you are located and the amount of pressure you should use, and I will leave that link in the description box below. I'm placing on my canner lid and locking in place. I'm turning my heat on high, venting for a full 10 minutes, placing on my 10-pound weight gauge, bringing up to 10 pounds of pressure, adjusting the heat to the lowest setting while maintaining 10 pounds of pressure, and then setting the timer and processing for 90 minutes. On my electric stove, that temp is around a 4 or 5, and the jiggler dances about 4 to 5 times per minute. Every stove and location is different, so you will need to observe and adjust accordingly. After the 90 minutes of processing time, turn off the heat and let it rest until the pressure comes completely down to 0, and this is going to take about 45 minutes. Do not rush this step. It is an important part of the canning process. After the gauge registers 0, remove the weighted gauge and let the pressure canner set 10 more minutes before removing the lid. And this is the results. Look at that delicious and beautiful chicken soup. Placing the jars on a towel in a draft-free area. These jars are going to rest for 12 to 24 hours. After 12 hours, I remove the rings and make sure everything is sealed. I let them rest for a full 24 hours and then give them a good wash, label, and place on the shelf. There is lots of flavor, nutrients, healing, comfort, and convenience all packed into 1 quart jar. I hope this canning video has inspired you to do your own home canning and preserving. It really is a great way to preserve your food and convenient for those busy days and nights. And until next time, enjoy! Last summer I found a great deal in corned beef. So great I had to buy it all, and I decided to can the meat and also can some hash. I am so into canning convenience foods and meals these days. With canned corned beef you can make a lot of different recipes. You can mix the meat with many different vegetables like potatoes, cabbage, green beans, carrots, turnips, parsnips, and the list goes on. It also goes together well with many different grains and pasta. The corned beef is great in soups, casseroles, scrambles, and stir-fries. Home canned corned beef is much better than your store-bought corned beef. Actually, there's no comparison. Both the texture and taste are totally different. Stay tuned to the end of this video, and I will show you a peek to one of the recipes I make with my homemade canned corned beef. This is about 15 pounds of corned beef that I rinsed well and tossed the seasoning packet. They all have quite a thick fat cap. I want to keep some of the fat because that is flavor, but I don't want to can all that fat. So I'm cutting off the fat, just leaving a nice thin layer. There's also a good bit of marbling throughout the meat. I peeled some russet potatoes and I cubed them into about 1/4-inch pieces for the hash. I washed my jars, lids, and rings. This is a raw pack, so everything will be room temperature. I'm using pint jars, and they typically hold about a pound of meat. I like to snugly pack the meat in the jar as much as possible, but I'm also leaving some pockets in there so they process properly. A pint of corned beef goes a long way in any recipe. This corned beef will taste just like it's right out of the oven. It has a rich flavor and mixes well with other foods. You can easily feed 2 to 4 people with this pint of meat. For the hash, I'm simply putting a layer of potatoes on the bottom, then about 6 to 7 nice pieces of corned beef, and topped with more potatoes. The canned corned beef hash will feed about 1 to 2 people, and it's really convenient to have on the shelf. I'm wiping all the jar rims with some white vinegar, and I'm placing on the lids and the rings finger tight. This 15 pounds of corned beef yielded 10 pints of corned beef and 6 pints of corned beef hash. Today I'm using my All-American pressure canner. For pints of raw packed corned beef and corned beef hash, it takes a pressure time of 75 minutes. At my altitude, it takes 10 pounds of pressure, and you will need to check your location for the suggested amount of pressure. Placing on my canner lid and locking in place, turning my heat on high, venting for a full 10 minutes, placing on my 10-pound weight gauge, bringing up to 10 pounds of pressure, adjusting the heat to the lowest setting while maintaining my 10 pounds of pressure, and then set the timer for the process of 75 minutes. After 75 minutes, turn off the heat and let it rest until the pressure comes completely down to 0, and this is going to take about 45 minutes. Don't rush this process. After the gauge registers 0, remove the weighted gauge and let it set 10 more minutes before removing the lid. And it's time to see the canned corned beef. Everything is still hot and bubbly. Placing the jars on my countertop on top of a towel in a draft-free area. These jars will be resting 12 to 24 hours. After 12 hours, I'll remove the rings and make sure everything is sealed. I let them rest for the full 24 hours and then give them a gentle wash, label, and place on the shelf. With St. Patrick's Day around the corner, now is the time to think about canning some of that leftover or extra corned beef. You will find that a lot of grocery stores will run discounts on corned beef after the holiday, and that's the time to pick up bargains. It is so nice to have canned meat in the pantry for convenience and in case of emergencies. Canning meat is a great saver on money and time. I hope this canning video inspires you to break out that pressure canner and give it a try. Remember to always check the USDA guidelines to follow safe home canning procedures. I will leave a link below for the site. And I'll see you at the next canning session. Enjoy! If you like this video recipe, please hit the like and subscribe button. Remember to hit the bell next to the subscribe to make sure that you get my future video recipes. You can also find me on Facebook and at my website. Feel free to share this recipe and my channel with your friends and family. And until next time, much love!